What does a high-end New York tenant look for in terms of design elements and amenities?
So I want to tackle the harder one first because I think I'm contrarian on this point. Amenities are all BS, and I'm going to tell you what I mean. No. I mean it.
No, no,
So
yeah,
if you have, no. If you have, especially a smaller building, maybe if you're in a larger building, maybe you can amenitize then. Candidly, nobody's going to the gym in the office, meaning nobody's going to the gym in a large office building that's specific to the office building, right? A real amenity in an office building, in a larger one, is having like a Equinox or a Lifetime Fitness, a really high-end gym there. So people can actually use that space the way they would use the gym normally. The only other thing that I've noticed is an amenity of any value at all, is if you have smaller office spaces, meaning sub 15,000 feet, a massive boardroom that can fit 40 to 50 people, right? Not just a 10-person conference room. I'm talking about a massive boardroom, because that happens where you do have, especially high-end financials, as some of our tenants, where there'll be a smaller fund, but they'll have their quarterly meeting or something like that, or they'll have an investor meeting. So then they'll need a very large gathering space, right? Outside of that, nothing. The amenity, this is what we've learned. The amenity is the space. The amenity is the location. And I'll tell you what I mean. And I'll start with location first. How do you get people how do you attract talent, right? That's what everybody cares about. How do you attract talent? How do you retain talent, right? And how do you get them to get their butts into the office? Those are simple. Make their office nicer than their home, right? Make it so that when they walk into that space, it feels like they're walking into a high-end residential condo. And I'll speak for that a little bit when I'll get to it. And then the second part is put it in a place where they're happy to come to every day, right? And that is just so vitally important. And that's been the calling card, right? So if you're, and we're heavily concentrated, again, this is very New York centric, but I'll use one neighborhood that everybody knows. We're heavily concentrated in Soho. Everybody knows that. That's an international market. Everybody knows it. And everybody knows it for a couple of things, right? Fashion, models, cool, nightlife, all those things. What you may not know about it is there's also really, everybody knows the high-end Soho residential lofts, right? Everybody wants that. Everybody has a picture of it in their mind's eye. Everybody has seen it in the movies. But if you make offices in that same location and you build out those offices to a really high-end finish, to an equivalent finish that you would see in a residential space, when those employees come to work, they are excited to be there. That's the amenity. When they walk out for lunch, they are happy to be walking on those streets, right? They feel like they're immersed in the culture of New York City. They're immersed in, the same energy and vibrance that gives Soho its high-end, sort of retail and high-end residential feel. For the same people, for the same reason, retailers, the ultra high-end retailers will pay any price per square foot to carve out a little space in that retail block, or high-end residential spaces will go for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a square foot. The same neighborhood is the amenity, right? So when we're talking about these smaller boutique buildings, location is the dominant driving force, right? High-end finishes, and when I say high-end finishes, there's a couple of things that we always talk about, right? And this is going to get into the technical parts, but I will point it out. And once I point this out, you're going to see it all the time and you'll never be able to unsee it. Everybody loves high ceilings. It's one of the best things you can have in an office space, in a residential space. That's why people do double height entryways in their homes. Everybody loves high ceilings. But what nobody wants to talk about is that glass and doors are built standard, right? In Soho, where we have a concentration, some of our ceiling heights are 15 feet. Right? They'll go 11 feet, 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever it is, 15 feet. And what most people will do is they will buy off-the-shelf doors and glass. And that means that maximum height for the door or the glass will be maximum 8 feet, maximum. And that's if you're buying, extra, but usually it's 7. So what does that mean if you buy, even if you spend a little extra, 7, 8 feet? That means if you have a 13-foot ceiling, you're talking about a 5 to 6 foot soffit, just a plain white wall, sheetrock above a piece of glass. And you lose the line of sight to the high ceiling and the high windows, right? Especially if you do perimeter. So all of a sudden you have this really high-end space where you lose the line of sight and you draw the eye level down and it looks squat. And you're like, you're in a space that has a 15-foot ceiling, but for some reason you're not feeling the ceiling height. It's because nobody wants to spend the money. I build full height glass, meaning the guys go in and build it on site, right? So if I have a 13-foot ceiling, I will have a 12-foot high piece of glass and just have enough to get the air conditioning in and out, right, above it, right? And that creates this grandeur. That's number one. Number two, wide plank hardwood floors, the same stuff you see in a residential space, in a high-end home, in a high-end condo. And third, which is nobody ever does this right. They say they do it right, but nobody ever gets it right. Kitchens, meeting spaces, right? They aren't just kitchenettes. This is for all the other sort of boutique landlords out there that want to get it right. Don't just build a little kitchenette. Don't put a little slab of marble or whatever. A lot of people use Caesar stone. Don't put a little slab that's 5 feet wide and 2 feet deep and call that a kitchen. No, take the space, build a massive kitchen with a massive island. Spend the money. We spend money on real stone, real marble. Why? Is because when people go and they congregate there, because everybody does, right? Everybody congregates in that kitchen area. It's open. It's beautiful. When they're standing there at this, beautiful marble island, that's 10 times nicer than I would say some of the junior employees most likely have ever had in any of their homes. They feel good being there. They just feel good. It feels good. They want to congregate there. They want to hang out there. They want to congregate in the type of kitchen that, they have on their, that they imagine. And when they're scrolling through Zillow, when they want their, $20 million mansion, build that kitchen in the office and let people use it and enjoy it. Right. So those are the three things that for sure we've noticed that people really take to when they walk into the space and they say, wow. There's a lot of other really nice, design details, elements. We always talk about linear diffusers instead of the ugly ducts. We always talk about, recessed lighting and beautiful light fixtures and movable walls and all these other things. And, we furnish and we do all these extras that we spend the extra 25% on when everybody's cutting back on that last 10%. And what we noticed is in these spaces, it's either going to go one of two ways, especially in the smaller ones. You're either going to attract the companies that sort of have no run rate. They just want what they want. They need what they need. They need it to attract talent. They need it to attract investors. They need show off space. We call it, they want to be able to show off their space in front of everybody. Anyway, so those two things that you touched on, and just to put a bow on it, like I said, it's location and build quality. Those are your amenities. Everything else, yeah.
Yeah, location and build quality are something we've seen play out in the data overwhelmingly, particularly location. I mean, Harvard Business Review, Wired, Forbes have all put out data that essentially says just that location is ultimately what's driving high occupancy rates, particularly in the high-end space, over people who put a ton of amenities in. And the same thing we've heard overwhelmingly on the podcast with conference rooms. That is a huge aspect of space that I think is underdone in the market. People need an additional gathering space, particularly on the corporate end.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this clip, please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe for more helpful commercial real estate content.